Welcome to another episode of Value Technology. We are trying to bridge the gap between business and technology. And today's our podcast is focused on transforming finance into strategic engine of operational. Finance is often seen as the department of no, the gatekeepers of cost and control. But what happens when finance becomes the engine of strategy, culture, and innovation? Today's guest has spent over 2 decades doing exactly that, transforming finance from reactive to proactive across industries and continents. From Mexico to Florida, from construction to manufacturing, Fernando Lopez has built financial systems and people that thrive even through stormy weather. He is the kind of leader who doesn't just manage numbers, he develops learning organizations. Fernando, welcome to Value Tech.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay, first let's start with your journey. You have a global journey, right? Building leadership across the borders. You started in Latin America, leading finance across 6 countries with Progress Software. What was the biggest challenge in unifying those teams under one financial vision?
Well, the biggest challenges I would say is the different cultures and put everything in line with what the company culture at the corporate level wanted. However, at the same time, without losing their own local culture. So it was that good maintaining this healthy combination of the local culture embedded in the corporate culture. That was really interesting to see because I use a different dynamic for each country. Among them is Brazil, and as you know, Brazil is not a Spanish speaking. So one of the first aspects for me was to learn Portuguese, which I did, and that was a way to connect with people.
Great, totally agree. So, having worked in both public corporations like Titan America and private firms like Blue Team, what leadership principles have stayed constant?
I would say two. One is integrity. Integrity is critical because people, if they don't feel you, that you are authentic and keep yourself, your values with what at least the your own standards, then you lose trust. So integrity is critical and maintaining that consistency in terms of congruence. That's one. Another principle is if I say something I actually gonna be doing it, I better do it. Period. Not it's not that I would like to or I suggest. No, it's doing as I say. And another important principle has to do with committing to do things as a team because it's not about me having being the leader of a group, but it's about getting the thing done based on what the corporate office management or project requires. And then it's not that you work for me. We are doing this together. And it's not either about grabbing hands and singing together. It's about everybody knowing what they need to do and what we are after, knowing dates, milestones, and whatnot. Those are very important principles of communication and connection with people that I see work better.
Great, thank you for sharing. So at Blue Waters, you mentioned, right? So at Blue Waters Builders, you implemented a new ERP system. Can you please tell us the behind the scenario? What was it like during the transformation? How did you win people over?
That was a very interesting case because it had to do not only with the implementation of a new software, it had to do with an upgrade slash update of their own culture because they were using a specific system and a very old system. Then they moved to from that system to a true ERP, and that for them was a disruption per se because they were not used to procedures. They were not used to specific steps other than a traditional project management tool. So for me, it was very important to translate principles. For instance, in accounting, if you interview today any of the employees, from shareholders to anybody, what was one of the mantras, so to speak, that I was used to say to them? It was accounting is the language of business, constant. So
Right.
that was the first problem. And the other one was really getting into the pace and cadence of an ERP system because, as you well know, systems are very good to streamline procedures, save time and whatnot, but they are also very good to tamper creativity because if a system is doing some specific things and the business needs to do something different in one step, people get to just to stay in that lane without looking into, oh, the business needs to do this, now we need the system to do that as well, and not like, no, we can do that because the system doesn't allow it. That's the challenge. That was a constant challenge with Blue Waters about challenging the status quo based on the improvement needed, based on what the business needed, not what the system was designed.
That's very interesting. So, what was this look like to for the system to adapt the change in the business?
Well, it's constant
It's
because
constant.
if there is constant something constant in this life is really change or change. So as we do business, things change, products, other the economy or regulations, etc. Then the business and the process needs to be assessed as same thing with clients, so we can constantly monitor that and reflect those in the systems we have in place. And I am not talking only about procedures with software. It has to do also with procedures in the way you do the business. Those are, integral part that are constantly moving. So we need to constantly look into this back and forth to adapt the systems and especially technology to what the environment requires based on our business.
Interesting. So, you have led finance through volatile sectors from construction to manufacturing, right? So, how do you make finance both disciplined and agile?
Government finance, I lost the last portion.
Yeah. How do you make finance both disciplined and agile?
Eh, Very similar to procedures. Is when I'm doing something, if I don't ask myself, because I have those in separate notes, periodically I like to see to that notebook, and it's asking the same question: is what is the thing I see every day doing that needs to be changed? Another one is what how can I save more time doing this? Because it is very easy to get into the rhythm of the business as usual. The more we get into that rhythm, the faster we get used to it. We build the habit, and we can lose visibility of what is going on. So if we don't stop and start to see, from time to time, and ask those questions like an observer, and then see what's going on, then very easy we can fall in those traps. So that periodic review to assess where we are at and where we can save money, or if there is some step, probably a step that we're doing, we don't need to do that step anymore. So we can save time there. Or by the time we review that, some other technology is available and we can get rid of those two steps, and then we can, get ahead. But if we're not periodically assessing those, we can miss it very easy.
Interesting.
That's
So,
that's that's a discipline to make it to keep it agile.
great. So, what do you think that separates a leader, one who reports numbers versus one who drives strategy?
There are different types of leaders, and some leaders they believe they are in a specific position when they are in a different. They could be, there are books and many things about leadership. One of them, uh, it would be, from the management perspective or from the technical perspective. But in essence, the leadership has to do with influence. What a person is doing and what the team needs to do. However, some leaders are developed in the way to teach people to do things in the way they want it. Another leadership position is about getting things done based on the environment with the added value that the leader has. But the third level is having this ladder, but we according in line with the mission or crusade of the business to what people is going after. In other words, you can have your mission statement. This is what we're after. However, if the leader cannot help to connect their employees or direct reports into that vision to make them theirs and in line with their personal goals, it won't work because everybody has their own lives. But the personal goals of one individual could be very different from the another one that with family or not, or the another one that is single. However, when both are after the same crusade, the same goal is they relate with, they connect with us. The leader that is able to do that, plus the things that need to get done, that's the leader that, in my opinion, is a holistic leader.
Great. That's really great insights. So, because we are talking about the leadership and leaders often work under the pressure, right? So, you have led through supply chain disruptions and economic uncertainty. What crisis tested your financial philosophy most?
Well, that's a hard question because every condition teaches you something. And for me, over time, I have learned that when in crisis is really the time, a good opportunity to learn something new. Because when you're in a crisis, yes, you try to learn to apply what you have learned, but at the same time, probably it's the first time you see them. So if you don't keep yourself composed and centered, you can make a very bad decision just based on stress or anxiety or when people freaked out. It's like, oh, the panic, and they make a decision just like that, and that's when the problem happens. So for me, over time, I have realized that the crisis is really a good time for opportunity. And what I try to do every time I identify a crisis, I like to step back, try to see, and from there, look at my values, make a decision, and move on.
Interesting. That's helpful. So, what's your framework for transforming fear into focused execution?
It's a combination of things. I am a firm believer of mind and body connection. So my framework to, like, for instance, face a crisis or start a new project and engage people. I like everybody to stand up in the meeting, having a meeting, standing meetings. Keep them scheduled for an hour, but keep them in 45 minutes, and actually have people take turns to present their case, and at the same time moving their body when we're walking. They look at me like, what is this about? But
Right.
the intention for them is precisely to trigger different aspects of, uh, yes, I may represent the authority, but look, we're doing this together. I don't have all the ideas. The person who may have the brightest idea may come from the one in this corner is not saying anything. But if that person doesn't stand up and walk and feels like the same, he won't talk. So for me, it's really a good aspect to do it. So that's one. The other one is keeping myself hydrated, not skipping lunch,
Okay.
and
So,
putting things
yeah,
in writing.
yeah. So, you mentioned about that meetings, everybody stand up, right? Does it really brings value? I mean, I'm into IT. We used to do that stand up meetings on a daily basis every day before COVID. After COVID, everything moved into virtual. Now things changed the way we meet. So, did you really see the value in those stand up meetings?
I did because the thing I actually I was careful though. I I like to schedule those meetings from time to time, not at a fixed time. We call them huddles, and sometimes those meetings were in the in one in the middle of the aisle. So the point was not to spend 1 hour talking to each other. The point was really delivering the message, what actions we're going to be taking, who's going to be responsible. That's it. So they liked them because they were short, to the point, and we sometimes I used to play because imagine we're standing in the middle of the aisle, and I grab a rubber ball and I bounce it to the floor to another person to catch it, opposite to me, and then they kept doing that while they were talking, and then at some point we stopped. But the idea is really just breaking that pattern of formality versus fresh, openly talking. Keep it short. It's not about showing off, nothing like that. It's about what we have in front of us to resolve. But important to point is not to do them at the same time, the same day, all the time, because they get used to it, and then it loses the flavor. This doesn't mean that we didn't have those other type of meetings. We did, but it was a different dynamic.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. So, how do you connect operations data with financial KPIs to truly see what's happening at the heart of the business?
Okay, that one of the things that I have in my experience is every time operations comes to the picture, I like to I like to challenge every member why we're tracking something, because if they cannot connect the indicator to what we need to measure as a throughput or output, why we have that measure anyway. So in other words, I like to challenge the KPI if that really give is going to give us what we're after, because it's not a point to having, 10 15 KPIs when in fact we can track 5 and really get the meat of the activity. Then one or two will be the owners of that KPI. And then when they get to know what is that about, what it really means, they actually feel ownership about that indicator. And the last time we did that, I like to put a board in front of the area of the staff to watch. Basically, literally, they were watching themselves how well the team was performing or not in specific, indicators. It was like a board game. It was really nice to see that, because every time imagine we had those huddle meetings, we're talking about something, and then I pointed to the board from time to time, and everybody was nodding. So what was the issue? You can tell immediately. But we're following in this indicator. We better hurry up. And sure enough, that afternoon before everybody left, we were all sure that the indicator next day was going to be different. That's how I tied operations with the number and the indicator.
That's good to know. So, because we are talking about the KPIs, so what's your secret to getting people to care deeply about the results?
What is the secret to give the results we're looking?
Yes. I mean, how do you ensure people are really caring about the results?
Because they own it. Is let's put it in a simple way. If we're tracking receivables, the days sales outstanding is a very common indicator. If the person that is pursuing collections is not working that number and the indicator properly, and if he or she doesn't calculate the forecasted, there is no ownership. It's not just a matter of doing math and calculating whatever balances the receivables are showing. It's a matter of understanding how the performance is going to be measured. So in that way, the person who's doing receivables will know that the receivable with the larger amount that is oldest is the one that will represent a highest impact in the indicator. As simple as that. He could be spending all day long collecting small balances that are probably in the 90 days, over 90 days, but it won't represent specifically an impact to the number. It may affect the age, but the dollar amount will be different. So when you start to see that play and the person responsible, that's when they take ownership. That's why I like to have them uh, working themselves in creating the KPI. So they hit, in that way they are attached to it and they can commit easier and they feel it that themselves. They have control, which that's precisely that they do have.
Right. So, what's one hard personal decision that taught you the importance of alignment over talent?
What is more important, alignment or talent? I like to be more on the alignment because the talent, the skill can be taught. The alignment, the person needs to feel it, and the person could be very talented, but there is no alignment, then it's not going to give results. So that's why that I like if I see someone that is very connected and dedicated to what needs to be done and doesn't have the skill, it's just a matter of time. All skills are learnable, are teachable. It takes time, but the person who is in alignment, it has connection with what the person is doing, and that alone is a driver for a higher probability that the person will be successful doing an activity. Whereas another one with talent but not alignment, that person will be will get bored very easy.
I mean, when you bring one new person onto the team, right? Do you often figure out whether the person is aligned or not during the initial interviews itself?
It depends. It depends because some people is they are used to walk around with a mask, pretending they are someone. So it's a matter of time for me to discover who they really are. However, in order for me, as I learned that over time, and the way to avoid it, I included and designed specific questions during the interview that were able to tell me with good probability how authentic the person was. One good example, very quick example, I I developed a series of questions, very not precisely office related, but what they were common or those questions had in common were things that people is not very familiar with, and logically you need to follow a process to give the answer. And the point of those type of questions is to see and watch the reaction of the person. Whether, for instance, if the person needs to say something about what's going to happen first based on the premises given, right away says that, it tells me that the person, when under pressure, reacts and doesn't think. If the person says, "Okay, can you repeat again?" or this and that, and they start to elaborate, that tells me that under pressure, that person likes to ask questions, etc. So I have 5 different questions like that, but it's not a guarantee, but has helped me a lot over.
Excellent. So let's move on to one more question. How has mentoring teenagers shaped the way you lead senior executives?
Well, this came up randomly because back then, as I was looking for a job, I ended up finding myself volunteering to a youth group to the church I go to, and I told to myself I'm going to be doing this for 1 year, no more than that, because I cannot commit for more. I'm still doing it.
Oh, wow.
I'm still doing it. Not as active, but I am still doing it because that led me, for many different circumstances. The director that was the lead of that group resigned before the year that I committed to. So when I looked at the teenagers and the things that we were doing already, I didn't have the heart to leave them alone. So I kept the group, and then after a couple of years, I realized that I needed to study psychology to understand them better, and that has served me a lot as well in my profession.
Excellent. Excellent. So let's move on to your the future of finance and lending organizations. You have led ERP revolutions. What's your take on the next one? AI in financing? Is it exciting, overhyped, or misunderstood? So, what is your take on AI in finance?
For me, it's interesting to watch. I cannot tell right away. I see a lot of reaction. So I see a lot of people. "Oh, I need to put AI," but bro, why? Do you really need it? And if you really need it, by then you you need to know something that is already doing it. Otherwise, because you don't know what you don't know, and AI is really evolving literally every day. And right now, for instance, if we finish this interview next week, a week from now, what most of the AIs are doing, most of them have been evolving because they have learned, they have learned on different fronts. For me, it's more like it's the answer is in the question. How can I really take advantage of this? Because in many instances, when you realize that what people is doing lately or gradually may tend to keep people from what they are doing currently, or if you ask the question, how can I use this, but at the same time, what I need to learn more to take advantage of it. So it's a two-edged sword. It needs to be approached with care, but also identifying one simple thing that the company can do using AI, and then once that is implemented, then go to the next. Because if people jumps right away to, let's say, automate accounts payable, they may get hurt because they will realize that they need to learn some other things, and then they probably need to spend more money to do some other things. And at the end, they could be thinking, why I got myself into it. It needs to be approached with with care, with caution.
Right. So, from the times you started, like 2 decades ago, the skills has been changing, right? So, you are a CFO now, and let's say, what kind of skills a CFO need in the year of 2030?
I lost the last portion of the question.
Or what kind of skills a CFO needs in the year of 2030?
Well, that's a question mark. I Aside of things that we already know, the CFO of 5 years ago is like 40% different from the CFO today. So I think like the CFO 2030 could be the same for those companies that are reluctant for implementation and the type of business doesn't require any automation. It's like keep it flat, which which will happen because not everybody is implementing everything. But for mid-sized to large companies, it's going to be very different. It's going to be very different in ways of learning. We will see definitely tools for people to learn faster, way faster, and different activities because eventually some of the things that we're used to see may not even be available in the future, and some others will be new. So that's why it's important to keep in mind from time to time to step back and look around what's going on. Be more aware of, of our surroundings. At least that will help to keep the person more capable. Kind of same, what do you call it? It's same precaution or things that okay, I'm going to be threatened in the future. Not to be paranoid, but one level like, oh, if someone would like to have my position, what that person would do that, or is my competition will be able to hire me today? Things like it's an interesting conversation.
Okay. So, if you could design a finance leadership academy, what's the first mindset module you would teach?
Oh, emotional fitness.
Emotional fitness.
Yeah. Not emotional intelligence,
Hmm.
emotional fitness.
What's the difference? Emotional intelligence versus fitness.
All right, it could be another podcast, but I will try. I want to keep it brief.
Okay.
Let me answer the question this way. The only issue I have with MBA's program, they're excellent, every excellent, business cases and whatnot. But the only thing is that what they have in common, all of them, all of them are in a controlled environment. Already things happen, situation. They explain the whole story, and they tell you what the person did. But when, for me, the real master is when you are in the middle of the issue, when you have the situation going on, when the bank is after you, when the client is suing you, and then you at home have some situation with your family, or your health has some issues, and you still have to resolve that. You need emotional fitness to face it. It has to happen, because if don't, you break down, you have panic attacks, and you name it. So for me, it will be a good program of emotional fitness, how to manage your emotions in crisis, in situations, etc.
So, if you could give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Do things faster.
What's that?
Do things faster.
Hmm. Do you regret?
Do it faster, because I study a lot before I moved, or did my first step. Like, no, do, go, go. Keep studying though. Keep the same pace of reading and applying, but do it faster.
Interesting.
Don't wait.
Do it fast. Okay. So, one final question. We are getting into the show. Uh, what's the legacy you want to leave as a finance and operations leader, not just in numbers but in people?
Accounting is the language of business, and numbers are your friends. Because I have seen so many people, so many business owners, managers, and whatnot. When they look at the financials, whatever they are, they cringe. I want people grab them, understand them, and know what we're talking about. Because at some point, the numbers will talk to you, and that's how numbers don't lie. They just tell you what they is. You like it or not, that's the result. But then you can actually influence those numbers to tell you the different way as you change your behavior. When you change your behavior, the result will be shown in numbers, and the numbers will tell you, good job, or look, it feels like you did a lot, but it didn't move the needle. So that would be a good legacy to leave for everybody to transfer along with the emotional fitness.
Interesting. Now I'm going to give the closing statement, Fernando. So, Fernando, your career proves that finance leadership is not just about managing money, it's about orchestrating people, systems, and purpose. I'm really glad to have you on my show today. Thank you so much for joining with Value Tech with Judy.
But really, my pleasure. I really enjoyed my conversation because I talked most. I didn't let you talk too much, but even though you asked the question, very good questions, I really like them. Enjoy the time, and I appreciate the invitation.
Thank you.